Langston Hughes, Auden, and Maya Angelou belongs to American literature. So Robert Frost. Robert Frost is one of the most celebrated poets of America. He received the reputation of being a poet of nature. And he is an author of universal themes, especially he focused on the human nature, human relations, human connections, bonds, relationships. So especially through his work, we can see or we can feel our own lives are presented there. So for example, through his presentation, he portrayed the familial life, the relationship between a husband and wife, and the rural setting he focused on, the very innocent kind of people as characters, as roles in his work. So in that way, he achieved the position as an author of universal themes. In that way, he is acceptable in all the regions of the world. And his work is associated with the rural life in especially New England. New England is a specific place, group of colonies in America. So the first and foremost settlement of American continent. And his work explores complicated philosophical themes. Sometimes we feel little tough to understand his themes. Those themes are so much complex, like for example, death. When he deals with that theme, for a common reader, it is very tough to understand. So he deals with that complicated philosophical themes. For example, if we consider Poem Burial, a poem by Robert Frost, in that he conveyed the death of two things. One is the death of a child, as well as the death of a relationship, means the breakup, the communication gap between husband and wife due to the death. And social themes also he has presented in another poem like The Death of a Hired Man, in which he concentrated on some social theme which are acceptable universally. Then when we come to his important works, I have included only few. A Boy's Will. These are all maximum volumes of or collections of poetry except Birches. The Road Not Taken is also a poem. North of Boston is a collection. A Boy's Will is also a collection. Then we have a Mending Wall, specifically introduced for us. So through this poem, we understand the poem describes one of the most common experiences in farmer's life. So who is this farmer? Farmer is the one who depends on his agriculture or his profession, through which he wanted to protect his crop or his land by creating a boundary around his piece of land or his field. So this wall, he calls that boundary as wall. So he discusses contrasting ideologies through two rural neighbors. So here, two farmers, they are preparing a boundary between their fields, and both of them are having different ideologies. One is interested to have that wall, one doesn't feel the necessity of the wall. So contrasting ideologies. And the poet refers to the countryside background in this, poem especially. I told you already, he is interested in rural setting. So in that way, the poem is based on countryside background, the setting, and the wall acts as, or the wall represents, or it refers to a boundary, a barrier like. So this wall is a barrier, maybe physical and psychological. Physically, it is dividing, that boundary or that barrier is dividing both the fields. Psychologically, it is dividing, it is keeping both the farmers away from each other. So when we concentrate on the summary of the poem here, it is a lyrical kind of poem in which the speaker introduces, or the poet introduces, two main characters. They are two neighbors and they have a wall, they have a boundary between them. And it is mainly about their yearly activity, because whenever there is some disturbance in that wall, in that boundary, they are going to repair it. And both the neighbors are having different views. While the speaker feels there is no need to have that boundary or wall, but his neighbor believes the opposite one. So they both farmers live over a hill, and together they are walking along the wall and fixing the gaps, repairing the wall along the way. Then they are both on the opposite sides of the wall, and their respective boundaries they are in. And the poet describes here, there are rocks on the ground on both the sides, which look like loaves of bread. And similarly, others are round like balls. And the mending wall, the poet explains how their fingers cut after apple picking, or after picking up their rocks. And he considers it is just an activity, nothing more. But the poet believes that there is no requirement for the wall. That means he doesn't want to have a boundary between, but his neighbor wants to have the same wall, because he feels that good fences are necessary to have a good neighbors. That is a line, that is a phrase mentioned in the text. Good fences are necessary to have good neighbors. But the poet disagrees with that statement of the neighbor, because they have any cows that will cross over. It is not because of that, but because of as it is like a tradition or a custom. So that is the reason why they wanted to have that wall. And then he says that there is a force which doesn't love a wall, because the speaker or the poet doesn't like to have a wall there. So that feeling wants to pull that wall down. So the poet proposes that all these things are like forced ones. And he wishes the neighbor to understand the feeling of the speaker and try to remove the wall. So in the conclusion, the poet wishes the neighbor figures it out, because he doesn't want to change his traditional thinking so much, so that he repeats the statement of good fences again. So the neighbor is not going to change his decision. So the wall will prevail forever. So the important themes of the poem are borders and limits, a kind of conditions, and the value of work, customs, traditions, and modernity are some important themes of mending wall. Then Langston Hughes, J.M. Langston Hughes. He is a well-known American poet, playwright, novelist, short story writer. And he is also an activist of the nation, America. Activist in the sense here, he participated in Black art movement, a cultural movement related to African culture. And he is one of the innovators of jazz poetry, a kind of peculiar, unique style of presentation, jazz poetry. And he became popular for his blues poetry. Blues is related to music, African music, a kind of pop music mixed with African and American. So he became popular with that music. And he is a popular leader of the Harlem Renaissance. So Harlem Renaissance here is a movement, part of that Black artist movement. Harlem Renaissance started in 1920s in a place called Harlem in New York city or state. So then his work depicts the low life of African Americans and their art. His work concentrates on the low life, down to earth or downtrodden kind of condition of African Americans and their art, the supremacy of their art. And he also portrayed life as full of struggles and hardships. Of course, everyone agrees that life is filled with struggles and hardships. But at the same time, that life is combined with joys, laughter, and music. So it depends on the individual how we receive it. So sometimes struggles may be replaced by joy. Sometimes hardships are replaced by laughter with the help of our art, that is music. So in that way, he portrayed these things. Then he publicly confronted racial stereotypes, means the treatment of Americans towards the Black. And he protested social conditions, how these social conditions never allowed Africans feel that they are humans or they are individuals in a democratic nation. And he tried to present a better image of African Americans through his work. So the presentation of African American life or their surroundings or their interests, their culture, their heritage allowed him to become more popular in the field of literature. And he became a people's poet because of his presentation of the African American. So he became people's poet. It is the title given to him. Not officially, but he has been regarded as a people's poet. So this is a small biographical information related to Langston Hughes. And then his poem, I Too Sing America, a very short poem, very simple, but it conveys the agony, the pain of African Americans here. So he starts the poem by using a personal pronoun I too sing America, means I too talk about, I too present, I too like beautify the country or its nature, America. And I am the darker brother. He's giving his details. I am the darker brother. And they send me to eat in the kitchen. The condition or the experience of the speaker is conveyed here. They means their masters or the whites or the Americans. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. Whenever the visitors come, whenever there is a kind of disturbance they feel for the presence of this Black, so they send me out. But I laugh and I eat well and grow strong. So the initial times, though there was some sort of discrimination towards Africans, but still they did not feel pessimistic. They were having that hope towards the future. So I eat well, grow strong, by having a hope towards the future. And tomorrow, this is also a futuristic note, what the speaker is trying to convey here. Tomorrow, I will be at the table, not in the kitchen, but I will be at the table. When the company comes, nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen. Then that means the confidence what he develops towards the future, the hopeful kind of feeling towards the future. So there, nobody send me out. Besides, they will see how beautiful I am and they be ashamed. They feel ashamed of their behavior, their discrimination. I too am America. I am American. I too sing of America. So in that way, he presented his voice towards the future. And this is a simple and short poem written in a very plain language, very easily to understand. At the same time, it presents the voice of African Americans. The speaker represents the whole community, African American community, and the poem deals with a serious subject and an important theme, that is racial discrimination. The condition in which these African Americans lived and the treatment towards them, it is conveyed. And the poem portrays the exploitation and the dishonor towards Blacks, what they experienced in the white community. And the poem also expresses the feelings of hope and optimism. By the end, he conveys confidently that he is going to be recognized. The people are going to realize the mistake. They feel guilty. They feel that embarrassment. Then W.H. Auden. W.H. Auden is one of the gifted poets and essayist, social commentator, and a veteran. Veteran means the one who participated in a war and come back alive. We call them as veteran. So he actually he was born in Britain but migrated to America, and he took part in Spanish Civil War. So that is the reason why we call him as veteran. And after deciding to write poetry, he wrote poetry for didactic purpose. Means through his work, he wanted to instruct people by combining both the modern and traditional elements. So he never devalued the traditional elements. At the same time, he never ignored modern. So by combining both the elements, he worked for didactic purpose. And his work reveals a belief in class struggle and harsh criticism of English upper classes. So that means here he pointed out the nature, the behavior, the treatment of English upper classes towards the downtrodden. And his major works are the Age of Anxiety, Another Time, Stranger. These are a sample for his works. Then we see The Unknown Citizen as an individual poem through which the poet is trying to convey here the condition of man in modern age. The condition of man in modern age of science and technology. What sort of person he is, modern man is. And this man is the representative of all the people at modern times. And when we go through the text here, we come to know what kind of person this citizen is, the man is. So this unknown citizen, unnamed, unmentioned individual, he is a model for modern man, a person identified by numbers, letters only here, not with proper name. So the poem is like a powerful reminder to all of us that how the government made the people to behave like. The bureaucracy we all help create can become a faceless, indifferent, and often cruel machine. So because of the pressure of that bureaucracy, man has become like this. And in that way, this unknown man, unknown citizen, is like a satirical poem which highlights the role of an individual in the society and his and the increasing facelessness, unidentified bureaucracy, so that can arise in any country. So in that way, the poet is satirizing the man as well as the government here. So here, from the first 5 lines, that the state is in total control and has planned and structured this individual's life, this unknown citizen's life, in order to create a complete conformist and someone who has a clean identity, who serves the greater good. So clean identity means without raising our voice, without having any problem in our life, like that. Just like paying our taxes, doing our own duty, concentrating on our own work, doing our job correctly, punctually, or hard work towards the growth of the family without involving in any of the social agitations kind, etc. So in that way, this common man lost his identity. So when he's calm enough, when he's silent enough, the state calls him as a saint. And he is a hardworking and eugenist. Eugenist means the one who concentrates on, who studies birth trends and family, the development or the innovations, that's it. So he never concentrates on the disturbances which prevail in the society. He never involves in such kind of disturbances. He does his work and he takes care of his family, that's it. And he is not a critical thinker. He never raises his voice. He never comments on anybody. He never points out the mistakes done by the government there. So he keeps himself silent in all the way. And this speaker comes to a conclusion that those in power, the people who are in power, that made him as a calm-going person, that made this common man or unknown citizen as powerless, speechless, and even mindless sometimes. So that government made him passive, as well as that made him to get rid of his critical thinking. So whenever there is an inquiry on this unknown citizen, he proves himself as good. So in that way, he pointed out the meaninglessness in the life of unknown citizen, as well as the authoritarian kind of treatment of the government. Then Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou represented herself as a poet, storyteller, activist, and autobiographer. More than that, she started her career as a dancer, as an actor, as a singer, as a composer. But later, she decided to become a director. She has been the first female Black director of Hollywood. And later, she became famous in writing. And she worked as an editor, essayist, playwright, and poet. And she was greatly affected by racism and civil rights movement. So as a result of that, she worked for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. To invent, to provide peace in the society. And she discussed the aspects of her personal life publicly, the way she received some sort of humiliation, insult, a kind of damnation, a kind of domination by male members. So in her work, she exhibited all her feelings, like I know why the caged bird sings. So here, caged bird is none other than Maya Angelou. And her works are regarded as a defense of Black culture. Whatever she wrote or whatever she presented, everywhere we see this defense of Black culture. And equality is the poem which is prescribed. So in this equality, she takes care of two things, you and I. So here you is the master or the white people, and I here is the poet herself, poetess. And through the poem, it is unequally divided into stanzas. So she represented the themes of, she reflected on the themes of equality, racism, and discrimination. So these three are conveyed through the use of repetition, like equality and I will be free. Equality and I will be free. So through this, she has presented the necessity of freedom. So equality is repeated 3 times in the text. So that denotes the necessity of freedom. 3 into 2, 6 times actually. This emphasizes that all the poetess wants to be free from racism, free from discrimination. She wants to enjoy the freedom and she wants to be equal to all. And the poet refers here, I, to herself, and that means she is representing the African American race, and you here is her master that represents the white people. And when the poet says, the master is unable to see her, the first line itself, you declare, you see me dimly through a glass which will not shine. That means through the improper vision, the owner or the white people are unable to see the struggle of African Americans. So they need to have a clear vision towards the condition of all these African Americans, and they need to concentrate on that vision, how they need to focus on the problems of life of all these African Americans, etc. And further he talks about you have heard me man to man, means the expression of grief or the pain towards inequality. So in that way, she concentrated on the helpless condition of all these African Americans towards racial discrimination. And then the poet keeps on referring to her drums as a sign that she is beating out the message of equality to everyone. That shows that she is against racism and she wants everyone to be treated the same, and that she will continue to spread the message until it is achieved or the problem is resolved, equality is attained. Until that, she will continue to spread the message. Then she says, but if I am just a shadow to you, could you ever understand? That means we can't recognize our own shadow. So she is referring to African Americans as shadows to the white people. So they follow the same footprints of white Americans further. That means the message of racism and that Negroes are treated lesser value compared to white people, then that they shadow on everyone because they are inferior. And the effective use of repetitions and metaphors of the poem create a sense of drive for, interest for, a goal for, or aim for equality, and which makes these repetitions make equality as a stronger message, and ultimately that is going to be achieved in future. The confidence, what Maya Angelou wants to present here, the confidence towards the future, confidence of attainment of freedom here, she conveys. Then we have completed American poetry here, and block 5 is dealing with the Canadian poetry, Indian poetry, as well as Australian poetry. So first of all, what is this Canadian poetry? Canadian poetry is a branch of English because even Canada, just like America, is filled with immigrants. So English has been transported to Canada. Not only that, even French migrated to Canada. So French poetry, Canadian poetry is a branch of English, sometimes French poetry, as well as American poetry. So we can't segregate, we can't separate these styles. Then Canada produced many competent poets who contributed to their the formation of their culture, their national consciousness through their work. Some important poets are G.D. Roberts, Duncan Campbell, Margaret Atwood, Phyllis Webb. So the last two are prescribed in our syllabus. So this Margaret Atwood, more than a poetess, she is famous as a novelist. And she is an award-winning poetess, novelist, and essayist. And she gained recognition as one of Canada's most prominent and prolific contemporary writers. She lived up to 2014, and she was influenced by the work of William Blake, one of the Romantic poets. And the influence is very clear in her first collection of verse, Double Persephone. which also sets the tone and theme of the rest of her poetry. So she is known for exploring ideas of gender, power, identity, religion, and myth. So she has been famous because of her portrayal of womanly feelings, especially through her novels. She has presented the problematic condition of inability to express by female. Then we have a poem, The Moment, by Margaret Atwood. So this poem is talking about the condition, the moment, so here the moment is a thought-provoking poem which challenges the nature of nature, how that nature is treating the human beings, and the concept of ownership the poem is dealing with, and the nature of human society. Especially in this poem, the poetess is trying to convey what sort of behavior a human being proposes or shows towards nature, through which she wanted to convey that always human beings try to possess something. Always they feel like having something or attaining something, or owning something through their hard work, through their intellectuality, etc. So in the first stanza, the speaker presents a sense of pride and accomplishment because after many years of hard work and long voyage, you stand in the center of your room. Room is nothing but the piece of land owned by that fellow, a house, half acre, square mile, island, country, etc., etc. I own this. So the ownership, the possession of a human being is conveyed here. And the second stanza changes from that positive attitude, that favorable moment, to more negative and destructive one, because is the same moment when the trees unloose their soft arms from around you, the birds take back their language, so the air moves back from you like a wave and you can't breathe. Whenever there is natural calamities occur, whenever nature presents a kind of disturbance to this man, so there it is somewhat negative because he can't breathe, he can't live, he can't be safe in that. So a destructive one. No, they whisper, you own nothing. In the third stanza, the nature is conveying the message to him that he doesn't own anything. He doesn't hold anything in this world because he is not part of nature, because he never cared for that nature. So you never found us. It was always the other way round. That means nature is giving him a kind of message, a lesson to take care of himself, because he took hold of that nature, that piece of land, but he never cared for that. So in that way, in return, nature doesn't want to show any care towards the human being. So in that way, the poem explores the conflict between man and nature. So the moment when nature responds to that man, the man loses his ego, loses his power, his position. So in that way, the moment conveys the actual position of a human being in this nature. He is just, nature is meant for his well-being, not to have a hold on it. The most important Canadian poets, actually we missed a Syrian Song. We can finish it off quickly. A Syrian Song, if you have your books with you, please focus on that. A Syrian Song is a poem, it is based on some kind of background. This is the one song everyone would like to sing, would like to learn, the song that is irresistible. So Syrian is just half bird and half human. So the three Syrians were, like, according to the myth, Greek myth, there are three Syrians, the daughters, all daughters of the river god Achilles. So one of them played the lyre, a musical instrument. One played the flute, and the other, that other sang. So this is the goddess of harvest and fertility, the song belongs to. So here, the Syrian song is trying to convey a message to all the people of the world. The poem explores the themes of vanity and seduction. The speaker begins the poem by telling, or by saying, that she is singing something that people all over, they want to hear the same song. So the people cannot help but find utterly captivating. What she is singing has the power to compel men to jump right off their ships and in drove, despite being able to see the washed up skeletons of other men who have done the exact same thing. So here the Syrian song is going to convey the meaning of life. The speaker wonders if she should confide something in the reader. So she is not happy to be stuck in the chunk of the land. So she doesn't like hanging out with the other two Syrians. She says to the reader that she will indeed confide in them and in no one else. She asks the reader to come a little near to her. So the truth, what she says, that is the song she sings is really a desperate attempt to get some assistance. She calls out for aid, for help, saying that no one but the reader is capable of assisting her, because the reader is special, different from all the others. Then finally the speaker says there is something or someone different. She continues her tedious melody, never fails her. So altogether, Syrian song expects some sort of positive attitude to help others. Then Phyllis Webb. Phyllis Webb is one of the prominent Canadian poets and radio broadcaster. She is conveying here the rights of, or the culture, or the identity of Canadian people. And her important works are Trio, Even Your Right Eye, Naked Poems. The Sea is also a Garden. And her Eve to her daughters. Sorry, poet. A poet is a poem in which Phyllis Webb is trying to convey I am promised, I have taken the veil, I have made my obeisance. I have walked on words of names. Just she is conveying how she struggled to become a poet under the under the control of a masculinistic poetic tradition. How she struggled to get the acceptance of that male poets, and how she has become a victim, uh, and she doesn't have a choice, and the sense of powerlessness, the helpless condition, the recognition, all what she could feel there, the conclusion that poetry is some form of punishment or exile, where the women poet is confined to a nunnery. So the speaker of the poem writes something by ensuring that it is not easy to sustain or live her life in a male-dominated society. So especially the poem denotes how this male-dominated world never allowed her to be a pure woman or a pure poetess, etc. Then we have Indian poetry. So Indian poetry in English emerged with the advent of colonial modernity to India, and it referred the Indian society in transition period when people accepted English as a language of expression. Then Indian poetry presented new ideas such as social progress by combining interest in tradition and its legacies without losing the greatness of that tradition, the beauty of the tradition. They are trying to combine social progression. Then some important authors are Henry D'Orazio, A.K. Ramanujan. So Henry D'Orazio is one of the first and foremost Anglo-Indian poets, a teacher, philosopher, and a journalist. I'm not going into the details of his biography. His poetry stands as a witness to the formation of colonial modernity in early 19th century India, and his robust English language public sphere emerged in Kolkata. And for the first time, English language newspapers and periodicals published in the city convinced writers and readers that Indian literature in English. So this Henry D'Orazio is one of the first authors who started writing in English. And his To India, My Native Land is a patriotic poem which conveys the life of native person during Renaissance, Indian Renaissance. Henry D'Orazio tries to convey here the cultural consciousness. He, like other authors like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Vidyasagar, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, etc., he is trying to infuse cultural consciousness into common men. So in this poem, he tried to do the same, and he presents the glorious period of India and tries to make the readers aware of Indian past. And through the poem here, he conveyed India, or he presented India as a deity. In ancient times, India was as beautiful as goddess. So beauteous hollow circled around thy brow. That means India was like a goddess at times. But later, it has become a chained eagle. She was grounded. In such condition, the poet tried to compose this verse as a piece of consolation to her condition. And he wished to recollect her lost glory and celebrate it through the poem. And A.K. Ramanujan. A.K. Ramanujan was a poet, translator, linguist, and folklorist. And these are his works. And the poem which is prescribed for us is Small Scale Reflections on a Great House. So this poem especially concentrated on saying the glory of India, a kind of nostalgic poem it is, about a great house where the poet depicts the joint family system, which represents the feelings of love, brotherhood, neighborhood, and unity, through which a kind of feeling is achieved. So he calls that house as great house. He is recollecting, he is reflecting on the great house there. So this poem reflects, or it signifies, the great Indian culture, and it represents a diversity. So the poet recalls, it is little lengthy, the poet recalls his ancestral house where he could feel all the characteristics of old culture and tradition, etc. Then Australian poetry. So here we can see through Australian poetry the native aborigines, the native cultures, and their establishment in a rocky land, in a barren land. And some important authors are here, but only Judith Wright is mentioned for our syllabus. So we are going to concentrate on her. So Judith Wright, I am skipping even the biographical information of Judith Wright. You can go through. And some of her important works are The Moving Image, Woman to Man. These are very famous works of Judith Wright. So we have here Eve to Her Daughters, a very popular poem in post-colonial studies as well as in Australian poetry. So here the speaker is none other than Eve. So she is talking to her daughters, trying to convey something, trying to guide them or instruct them towards their future, to handle their husbands, etc. And not only that, she talks about Adam's fall. And along with Adam, due to that, I think all of you are aware of the biblical story, how Adam had been expelled from the Garden of Eden. So after fall, his behavior, Adam's attitude, and Adam's work, she is trying to convey here. And she talks about the events which took place after their fall from the garden. And she talks about her attitude, how she received this particular behavior or the incident, the fall, and how she responded to it. And then she is also talking about Adam's overconfidence, how he reacted towards that fall and how he wanted to prove. Actually, there is a lot to discuss, but due to the lack of time, I am unable to concentrate on this. And altogether, by the end of the poem, he conveys a message to her daughters that is just, you have your own character, but you can't follow whatever directions are being given to you. So it is a womanly nature. So all her daughters, just like her, can't resist the directions given to them by their husbands, but still the daughters must be conscious. And the other poem is Woman to Man, in which the poet presents the feelings of a woman, how a woman develops her own feeling towards her own life. And the speaker is none other than a woman, expresses her feelings as a wife as well as a holder of her future offsprings in her belly. So it is just like how Eve to her daughters conveyed a message to all the daughters of the world. Here, she is conveying a message. She is talking to her own future offspring who is there in her belly. Okay, this is all about today's topic or today's session. I think it is clear. I feel. Do you have any doubts on this? If you have any doubts, you can avail the chat box and you can clarify your doubts. Is everything clear?
Clear, ma'am.
Thank you. What about others? Sophia? So at the end, you have a model paper. You can prepare well based on the model questions here. Try to focus on each and every topic of the textbook and try to frame your own answers. Have a prior preparation. Make a note of each and everything in detail before attending the exam. All the very best.
Thank you, ma'am.